Legislature passed, they put about nearly $1 billion back into education. I say back in because there had been cuts out of it as well. But they put it back in, and the McCleary decision actually is telling them they need to fully fund House Bill 2261, which was the one that put in place the prototype school allocations. So they put $1 billion in this year. There'll probably be about another $1 billion in next biennium in 2015 to 2017, and then probably an additional $1 billion going in 2017 to 2019. The McCleary decision, House Bill 2261, and then the McCleary decision actually have done this. You know, wait a second, let's get back to education being the priority in our state budget. It's a constitutional requirement. We have to do it. There's other things that they don't have to be doing. This should be the priority. 2261 is what set up that prototype school allocation model. And teacher librarians, if anybody says, oh, there's nothing, you know, in the state about that, that's absolute BS, because teacher librarians are listed right underneath principals in the prototype school allocation staffing mix. And that's where, and then and then you also have provisions for technology, but also library materials. The library materials were put into the bigger material supply and operating costs, which used to be known as NERC and now is known as MSOC. In 2010, they started funding 2261 and the prototype school allocation. So this is when you first saw the shift in thinking. The legislature passed a bill that said you will crosswalk existing dollars in education into this new funding model. So basically that's how they started to do it. This year is the first year that you sort of really, with the more money going in, that you're really starting to see that allocation model start to be looked at more closely. And legislators are expecting in 2017 for this allocation model. It's not a mandate. Things don't have to be spent, because there are some schools that have different ways of doing things. But at the same time, the legislature is going to say, why don't you have this? You know, we kind of said we went through all this work to say this is really what needs to be part of our basic education goals. We have our basic education staffing mix, you know, these types of things. Why don't you have this? Why don't you have a librarian? So that's going to be, so it's not a mandate, but there's going to be in 2017 reports that have to start coming back. For the teacher librarians, I often heard, well, where's our money? You know, we're in the prototype school allocation. Like I said, not a mandate. It's what's determining the base education dollar amount that goes per kid. So it's about $55.37, I think, is the statewide average per student. It varies because of staffing mixes. The allocation model changed, so you have different staffing mixes in schools, and so there's some variance there. In terms of size of school, because prototype school is like 600 students in a high school. I don't know how many of those actually exist.
What's that?
Yeah, so basically, if you've got two schools of 1,200 students, you effectively have, for the mix in the allocation model, 4 prototype high schools. Okay, so this is all calculated into this report, and this is what I'm getting at. You guys probably are going, I haven't seen a change. I haven't seen any more money come into my library. I haven't seen that. The legislature thinks they've given you more money. Okay, so now here's what we need to do. You guys need to educate yourselves on how much is there. You need to educate, and then you need to get some parents to start looking at this too. And you need to then go start talking. Start with your principal. Then say to the principal, how do I go talk, you know, who else do we talk to about this? Where is this money? Because chances are your principal hasn't seen it either. This is the State of Washington Allocation Summary Report. It's the report 1191. I think we linked 1197 on the website, which is supposed to be the district by district analysis. You will see in here lots of, you know, you have school generated, certificated instructional staff. You guys are certificated as our counselors, so you're in that mix. But then when you get back and you start looking back in the back, oh, hey, there is teacher librarians broken out. There's your point. This is obviously the elementary, because it's at the 0.62 or whatever it was for teacher librarians. And so that's where you'll start to see that broken out. So this is the report. So this starts to show you, oh, okay, That's the money coming to our district for teacher librarians. You're part of, in the summaries, you're part of, you're embedded and certificated.
Okay.
But you're broken
we
out.
have a broken out
This is the prototype school model sheet
Okay.
that shows the ratio and the staffing. That's what the 1197 shows for your individual district, would be how much money is coming that the state thinks it's doing for teacher librarians. It's not a mandate, once again, but it's how much does the state think if they were running it, you know, and had complete control, how much they think should be getting in and how much your legislators thinking is going to the school library.
So 0.38 probably would be coming from our levies.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah.
Our levies specifically said libraries, to
Yeah.
support libraries. And in the past, we've had full-time librarians.
But for what size school?
Well, and the levy, that's going to be different. That's where your levy probably passed before the prototype school allocation model went in. The states, before, districts totally relied on levies. And what they did is the state said, no, teacher librarians should be something the state funds. And we're going to fund it at this rate. So you're funded at the 0.5, the 0.6 rate. But remember, more money went in this year, so that multiplier on that rate went up too. So I'm just showing you where the ammo is that you can say, there is money coming for this from the state. You know, the district's getting this and the district is allocating it. I'm trying to give you guys the ammo so you can go back and say, hey, this much money is coming in for teacher librarian, certified teacher librarian staffing. Where, you know, what's going on with that? And then the MSOC is the big one for you guys this year. So you're looking at it. So you then talk to your other and you say, we're not even close to this amount in terms of our staffing dollars and all that. So then the question is, where is the money?
But they can say, for example, we opened 3 new classrooms and we needed to buy desks.
They could, but at least you know.
Yeah.
And at least then, and the reason why this is important, it's important for you to know this. Back here in the materials, in its library and other supplies, they say, oh, it's for other supplies. So I can tell you there was a significant legislative intent that libraries get some material
We have
money.
it first.
And you're here on the statewide summary first.
And what about technology? Is that
Technology's on there too, right there.
Technology is a separate line.
Yeah.
It has its own line item.
Yes.
Technology is one line item, library and other supplies is a separate line item.
Exactly, there's
Okay.
2 line items. This is
So
the
if I
thing, this
look
is
for a
the accountability piece. There is a district report like this for
But I should be able to
everyone.
look at that line item and see
And
what
You
happens.
should be able to look at it and say, oh my gosh, there's like, okay, if we're looking at this as, you know, we've got, looks like $69 million total statewide for technology and $159 million total statewide for librarian. We don't seem to be even close to that. Where is that money going? Tech is 2, library's 5.
Library's fine, which is good.
So this is just materials. This is materials, not staffing. You can get parents to say, if you got a parent who says, how come we don't have this in our library? Say, would you be willing to go ask the district and the school board how much money is being put into these line items in our district? You know what I mean? You know, so you want the 1197 report, which is what the state allocates out to the district for these line items. Then you need to go ask the district how much money was actually put into these line items. Like I said, this is not a mandate. The expectation, though, is the district has a good answer as to why they're not doing it.
And as we get answers or responses, that information has to get back to Carolyn so she can help shape the legislative pressure to help us, right? So as you hear answers and responses, forward it to Carolyn and to Sarah Glass, our advocacy chair who works most closely with Carolyn. Because the answers and the responses are really a significant piece of data that's going to get that stuff moving our way.
Legislators are under the impression that they are providing funds, state funds, for school library programs, teacher librarians and library materials. If it's not going there, we need to be able to let them know. And if you don't ask, you might not ever get it. You know what I mean? Right now, when you're looking at the staffing allocation mix of what is allocated within the FTE basic educational allocation per student, you look at your district mix, and you would get this number, and you can get the total dollar amount in your district per student that should be going to library staffing. Does that make sense? So if this 1197 report should have the amount of dollars that the state has allocated within the basic ed FTE amount for teacher librarian staffing and library materials and other supplies and technology. That's the dollar amount you can get. And you can look at your library budget and say, we're not even close. How do we, why is there such a discrepancy? As you get this information, get your district report, then you really have to show I would have the need statement, before I even go make the ask. I would have something that shows the need, and I would get parents involved. And then I would go to your principal and say, hey, we were looking at this report, and there's supposed to be X number of dollars coming into our district for school libraries. We've been talking to the other librarians in the district. We're not even close to that. How do we need these things in our libraries. How do we go get access to some of these dollars? And, kind of start, this, hey, we need these things. There's supposed to be money coming in. How do we get in line for that? It's supposed to be coming to us. How do we make sure we're getting that, or find out how we get at least a piece of it, or find out where it's going? Really make it a non-adversarial. Hey, we see this, we're not even close, we want to know, and maybe they'll say, well, because we were backfilling this year, this is what's happening, but as it comes in, then we'll start to, so in the 2015 budget, when another $1 billion comes in, then here's our plan. And then you can at least say, okay, what's the plan? Even if you can't get the dollars from this, at least maybe you can start establishing the plan for how in the future they come in. That's the beauty of this. That's the beauty of having you guys in the prototype school allocation, able to hold something up and say, this is the amount of money that the state thinks it's sending to a library program in the 1191 and 1197. Remember, 1191 is the state summary, so this is what the whole state's doing. 1197 is district specific. This is what the state is using as its basis for funding basic education. Boom. And you're right in the middle of it.